Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Nextopia, site search that increases sales. Visit nextopia.com/podcast to learn more. Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations by Practical E-Commerce. I'm Kerry Murdoch. Email marketing is our topic today. Many e-commerce merchants rely on email marketing, and many of them, we suspect, wish they could monitor and track emails based on where a recipient lives. This would allow for offers specific to a market or a specific geographical area. Well, Listrak, an email marketing provider based in Pennsylvania, now offers email geo-tracking. Listrak's CEO is Ross Kramer, and he joins us here today. Well, Ross, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Kerry. It's great to be on the podcast today.
We appreciate your time. Tell us, what is email geo-tracking?
Well, a few years ago, we had the idea based, probably on some other ideas that were kind of flying around our product development group, that since we were already tracking if a person opened a message, and we actually track if a person has read the message, which we classify as having opened for 5 seconds or more, which, I know that this podcast is really appealing to folks that are in the e-retail space. And, for those guys, subject lines, above the fold body copy really is the lifeblood of their email campaign. So we wanted to try to give them a metric which included how well are our subject lines and our, above-the-fold offers performing, and that's the concept of a read, and which is if the message has been opened for 5 seconds or more. So since we were already tracking that stuff, we figured, hey, we already have the IP address. We could do some geo encoding of this and find out sort of where in the world those people are. So email geo-tracking is really plotting where a person is opening a message or clicking through from a message, where in the world they're coming from.
And that requires a click to grab someone's IP address. They have to click on the message.
Not just a click, but we can actually determine an open as well. So almost the whole industry uses a clear GIF, like a 1x1 pixel GIF or JPEG, to detect whether or not somebody has opened the message. Now, that's going to require that they're getting the HTML part, and it's going to require that they have images turned on. Two things that are not always the case today, with the portability of email, people getting it on a BlackBerry, or getting it at your Yahoo account with images disabled by default for a security measure. But if those two things are true, and we can detect that they opened it, then we can see the IP address that they've opened it from, and we can match that up with some data that we buy from partners, and then we plot that on a map. We actually plot it on a Google map, so we overlay on top of a Google map what your performance statistics look like: opens, reads, clicks, overlaid on top of a map.
Do you see geographical differences in open rates? I'm curious.
A lot of times it has to do, like, for example, we're an East Coast company. Listrak is based in eastern Pennsylvania. A lot of our marketing efforts have happened on the East Coast. So we see a large majority of our activity happening on the East Coast. But it's also interesting to see, and that's when I just look at stats of, our own Listrak newsletter. It's also interesting to see in sort of Western cultures where the English language is prevalent, like the UK and Australia, we see high degrees of opens and clicks there. So I think a lot of times it has to do with kind of where your marketing is taking place, as well as where your market lives. If you are selling something that appeals to rural America, you're probably going to see more opens and clicks in the heartland versus on the periphery of the country, out in the larger metro areas.
Tell us about geo-tracking relative to e-commerce merchants. How can it help them? We've talked about that briefly here, but of course our listeners are mainly smaller e-commerce merchants. Ross, give us some examples of how this feature could help their business.
I think there's a number of ways that it can work. I think the first thing where it can work is seasonality. We live in a part of the world, or much of the country lives in the part of the world where you see, many times 4 different seasons. So if you are selling, say, swimwear, okay, you're not going to be able to sell swimwear to the folks in the Pacific Northwest in January, right?
Right. I wouldn't.
So
not normally anyway. Right?
Exactly, and a lot of things that a lot of the stuff that we talk about in the email space is about relevancy. And so if you're an outdoor apparel company, you want to try to reach your audience with the most relevant stuff. So if you know where people are located in the country and in the world, and so we shouldn't just myopically be focused on just the United States, but if we look at that as an example, if you don't know where the people live, and many times as an e-commerce merchant you have order history data to go on, so you do have that, but then you might have some other data from just sign-ups or sweepstakes you've run, or maybe you've been doing some Google AdWords and trying to get email acquisition, or you're doing email acquisition on your site, and you're trying to just acquire the email address from a volume perspective. You're not really asking, what zip code, what city, what state are you staying in, because you're trying to increase your conversions by asking the least amount of questions. So you may not know where in the world they are. The good news is, and I don't, surely don't want to turn this into a Listrak commercial, although we are uniquely positioned to be one of the few ESPs that has this. But so our customers can see this, and you could in turn impress or send swimwear offers to folks in Florida, for example, and turn that into a dynamic content message where you're sending swimwear stuff to folks in Florida and fleece jacket offers to folks in the northern reaches of the country, using dynamic content. So you're speaking very relevantly to your audience, giving them relevant offers that make sense for them, and you'll increase your conversion ratio. There's some other things that you can do if event-based things that you could do where if you are having particular events throughout the country, you can look at where those people are and do that. The other thing that you could do from a retail perspective is if you're looking to invest in different areas of the country, if you're thinking, doesn't make sense to open up a West Coast presence, you can look at where your population is responding to your offers and to your email campaigns to make some informed decisions there. I know for me, so for your group, search engine, the search engine stuff is huge. We actually just got back from the SES show, the Search Engine Strategy show in New York. The last time we were there, we partnered with our friends from Vintage Tub and Bath that put on this sort of a feast for search marketers. And I wanted to see who on my site, we had bought a bunch of tickets, I wanted to see who on my site, who on my email list was in the New York area and was responding to my emails in the New York area, and I was able to use our geo-tracking feature to see who's opening and reading and clicking in Manhattan, because this is where this event is taking place, and I'm going to reach out to them and offer them some free tickets to this event that we've got.
Is it automatic in your system that if you don't have a recipient's location, if that recipient opens the email, it automatically logs in where they're located, or is there additional action that the sender has to take to record that information?
No, there's no information, and essentially what happens is, so if the two of us decide to start an ISP today, and we decide we're going to start this ISP in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, we have to acquire IP addresses. When we acquire those IP addresses, we have to register them with a group called ARIN. It's the Association of Names and Internet Numbers or Protocols or something. I can't remember. Too many acronyms these days. But you register your IP addresses with that organization, and you have to say what city and town are you going to use that? If we open up a modem bank in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, we have to then tell ARIN this modem bank is located up in Harrisburg, and these IP addresses are associated with that. We then buy. There's another third-party data provider that provides that data from ARIN, and we purchase that from those folks. We then purchase some other data that tells us the longitude and latitude of those zip codes. And then we do a Google mashup and mash it up with those people. So for our users, there's nothing that they have to do. It's all done, all the number crunching is sort of done behind the scenes, through sort of a bit of data warehousing and really doing, the sort of the modern day mashup where we're taking, data that we have and data that we license from other folks and kind of visualizing it onto a Google map, and it makes a lot of sense.
How much does geo-tracking cost?
So there's no extra cost if you are a Listrak user. So most of our Listrak users, our price point starts at about $250 a month. Now that's that you get everything that comes with that, the dynamic content, the personalization and segmentation and things like that. So the good news is that there's no extra added cost. If you are that $250 a month includes what we call our pro level, and if you are a pro level customer with our next release that we're releasing at the end of this month, you'll actually be able to log in, and in the author page when you're building your segments, you're going to be able to say, send this message to anybody within X, anybody on my list that's within X miles of this zip code. So that'll be really cool.
Well, for our listeners, again, Ross's firm is Listrak, and the URL is listrak.com. That's L-I-S as in Sam, T as in Tom, R-A-K, listrak.com. And Ross Kramer, the CEO of Listrak, we want to thank you for your time today, sir.
Hey, you betcha, Kerry. It's been great to be with you.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for another new episode.